Good evening, everyone. This is the Plug Talk Podcast. I am Jamal.
I'm Steve.
I'm Misha.
I'm Pastor KJ.
Hey, KJ.
Our special guest.
Our special guest tonight is going to be Pastor. Pastor Kelvin Jarrell Anthony of the Solid Rock Church in Birmingham, Alabama. He's going to be joining us tonight for our first Real Talk podcast. Tonight we're going to be talking about the black church. How do we go from community to commercial?
Why you get him his whole name like that though?
Yeah.
Like
This is the Honorable Pastor
how you know
Kelvin
he
right
hiding
here.
from somebody?
How you know I'm not trying to?
You know.
Hide from who? Everybody knows your name all over social media.
He don't say the middle name though.
I never say the middle name.
He normally just go by Pastor KJ to be honest.
Go by Pastor KJ. The J is silent. The only time anybody know that the J is anywhere is they got to call my voicemail, and thank God everybody ain't got my number.
I just want to let it be known right here. There are no Tekashi 6ix9ines in here, okay?
No.
None.
None of y'all
All
is
right.
either now.
All right.
Y'all better not be none.
No.
Y'all, he is doing the most out there.
He
Right.
really is.
In the words of that David Makes Man character, no snitching, no dishes. Well, I don't know. I missed that saying.
But anyway, we just gonna get right into it, y'all. Let's see who wants to start off with the first question, and we'll let Pastor KJ take it from there.
I'm just gonna jump in later. I just want to see where this is going.
Well, you know what? Let's start off. Let's piggyback off that conversation we were having in the car, man. About I know me and you, we were talking about my brother and how he had converted to the Hebrew Israelites, and you were just giving me a rundown of where Christianity started, how Christianity started in Africa, the Ethiopian eunuch, and just share that story with Misha and Steven, man. Just start by sharing that, and we'll just jump into that from right there.
Sure. Let me begin by saying this, that Christianity, as we know it, is those that are followers of the way of Jesus Christ. Those who are believers of Jesus Christ. And the early church was started on the day of Pentecost, and after the day of Pentecost, the church grew from a small group in the upper room all the way now, even to this day, to billions of individual followers. But in particularly, a lot of people have this misconception and misdiagnosis that Christianity never started in that it's a white man's religion. I beg to differ, because in the book of the Acts of the Apostles, there was an Ethiopian eunuch who had went to Jerusalem, and he went to Jerusalem to worship during a feast day, came back, and he sits in the desert. On the other side of that story is Philip, who was an evangelist who was going out spreading the good news about Jesus Christ, ends up doing his thing, and the Lord takes him from where he is to a desert where the Ethiopian eunuch is. And the Ethiopian eunuch is out there reading a scroll, because they didn't have the 66 books like we have today. They're reading the scroll. All of a sudden, next thing you know, he's like, this is a book about Isaiah. Yeah, but I'm reading it, I'm understanding it, but I don't understand what I'm reading. And Philip begins to explain what he says, and then the Ethiopian eunuch became a candidate for baptism, got baptized, and Philip left the scene, but the Ethiopian eunuch went back to Ethiopia. And when he went back to Ethiopia, he began to spread what he was taught, and that was about Jesus Christ. And thus, from Ethiopia, that's where you find out to this day. If you go to Ethiopia right now, to the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, you will discover the scroll that the Ethiopian eunuch had was the book of Isaiah, and it is still there to this day. And not just that, but Christianity spread from Ethiopia to different other parts of Africa.
Okay.
And after all of that, the next thing you know is, different Africans believed in different things. Like some were Muslim or Islam, as we call it, because of course Egypt is not far from Africa. And then you have others who were polytheistic in their belief, meaning that they believed in many gods, like the God of the sun, the God of, like the same way the Greeks believed in all of the above. They subscribed to that particular thought as well as that. And so my point is saying is that Christianity spread it throughout Africa. Some people believed, some people didn't. But like I say, when you hear about Jesus, you can't help but to stop and share the gospel about it. Because that Ethiopian eunuch's life was changed, and he ended up changing others. And Ethiopia to this day has the first Coptic Orthodox church. In fact, they got, as they call it, the African Pope down in Ethiopia with the Ethiopian Orthodox Church.
See, I didn't know any of that.
No, me neither.
I didn't know any of that. I was never taught any of that. And I'm really glad that you shed some light on a lot of things that it's common knowledge to people that actually study the faith, that actually study the religious text and the religion.
Right.
But
Deep into like the beginnings and the origins.
Exactly.
Right.
But a lot of people don't do that.
Because you're only taught what is learned to them, and it's just passed on to you. But you never get the entirety of the knowledge. You never get the origin of where it actually started from. You just have this common perception of, okay, so I go to church, I believe in Jesus Christ. Well, how did this all start? I'm like, I got a bunch of missing pieces here, so I don't really understand the concept of what you're trying to teach me.
Right. And I'd say this to any new believing Christian, or even those who are in ministry. It always goes back to always getting to understand the church history. Now, not church history about when Big Mama and Big Daddy put a brick on the building and all of that. Not that. But church history as in knowing how it originated. Because, you know, in the Gospels from Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, you will discover it talks about Jesus' life, his birth, what he did, and how he lived. And then the book of Acts is just a historical book that talks about how the church began, how some of the Pauline letters that were written by Paul, and letters that was written by Peter, and letters that was written by John, and even Jesus' brother James, who was an apostle as well, who had saw Jesus and had all of that, was written to categorize the life of Jesus, but also to give us what we believe in, the tenets and beliefs as a Christian. And so I tell you, church history plays a major part in our faith walk. Yeah.
Okay.
Personally, I think, all of that, what you just said, it plays a big part in everything that we do. It, how we walk, how we eat, how we speak to people.
How you live your life in
how
general.
you live your life in general.
Right.
So, I believe to, let people know that if you want to know anything about that, you need to go do your research.
Right.
Because it's a powerful thing and it's very strong among people in general. A lot of people don't know their history on that, which they need to know about that.
But when you think about it, you don't necessarily think about, the question is never how it started.
Right.
It's just about, okay, this passage says this.
Right.
What does it mean?
Right.
And no one ever goes back to the beginning because it's never a thought that just pops in your mind.
Well, I think people just, like Jamal says, like we only know what we are taught.
Yeah.
Right.
So, when people, an average person can sit up there and get taught anything, but some people will get taught something and just take what they get teached and run with it.
Right? Yeah, and try to add on from that.
Right. It's like
it always starts somewhere.
Nobody never has the question of, okay, I understand what I'm getting taught, but there's got to be something deeper than this. Mm-hmm. That it goes back to an origin of something.
Yeah.
So,
because it's just like, whenever I prepare sermons, and Misha, she's a member of our church, and she'll attest to this reality. When you come to our church on a Sunday morning, I'm not that average that, get up and I'm going to tell you to clap your hands, touch your neighbor and all that, that's not going to be to like the end or the middle of the message.
Yeah.
If I'm saying something that, you know, is to encourage the saint. But in the meantime, to get to the meat of the message is you got to research and go deep into scripture.
Right.
It's 3 processes that I use in my homiletical method, and that is the observation, interpretation, and application of a text.
Right.
Where you observe what you've seen in a text, but then to interpret it, you want to know why. And that's why it's important that, you know, you read your commentaries, your historical books, to understand what was the culture in that day and time.
Right.
Because understanding, even in the 21st centuryism, in a Trump era, in a commercialized, materialistic society, stuff that happened biblically then don't affect us as it would now.
Right.
Like back in the days of Jewish, now this is something funny, and kind of an icebreaker in a way.
Mhm.
In Jewish culture, if you wanted to marry somebody who was a virgin, you would literally have to put a white sheet on the bed. And that white sheet would have to be on the bed. If it came out bloody, she was a virgin. If it was not that if she was not a virgin, the next thing you would know is the sheet did not come out as red, and that automatically made her, in that culture, she was a whore. But in this particular culture, we don't have to do that. Thank God. We don't have to.
Right.
And it's all about making sure that you understand the culture of how something was then.
Mhm.
And then if you understand how it was then, it can be able to be applicable to life now. It just depends on how it is used.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's pretty interesting.
Right.
I didn't know it was that serious. And then with everything you know as far as like that situation medically, to call someone a whore who would have been a virgin but that didn't bleed.
Right.
You know, that would have been horrible.
Yeah.
Right.
Like
It was a simpler time.
Yeah.
Very simpler.
But they had a lot of rules and a lot of laws and a lot of regulations, and even some of our counterparts who are of, you know, this new movement of Hebrew Israelites, they're believing in, you know, a bunch of foolish laws in a way. It's so bad about, you know, how they believe in meat dietary supplement. I mean, meat diet. I'm trying to figure out the word to use about how they would have stuff relating to meats and diets and
certain meats
that they eat, and
Mhm.
then, you know, talking about, you know, certain different things of that particular nature. That's not how, you know, all of those were laws. You had to look at it in context. Those laws was referring to the children of Israel
Mhm.
and all of the above and so forth like that. And when Jesus died, he did not come to just abolish the law. He came to fulfill the law, and he did. That law is that, you know, we was not under grace. We, you know, couldn't, you know, I wouldn't dibble in that there, but the point is, you know, we just had to make sure that in all that we do, we understand the context. That way we won't be cons of what we read and understand.
Right.
I get you.
All right, so let's hop on our first subject, community. The ministry and the community, and we're just gonna tie both of those subjects together. Let's start with the good that the church has been doing for the community, and we'll start back as far as we can remember. And I can start with my pops. My dad had been in the church all his life, 1948, all the way up until the day that he passed back in 2010.
Yeah.
My dad was a big supporter of the church, a large part of the church community. Piggybacking off of what you said, he helped put the bricks on Mount Hermon Baptist Church out in West Brownsville.
Still there to this day.
Still there to this day. His name is on the church.
Yeah.
And growing up in that church, I've been there most of my life up until we all got disconnected when I moved to Detroit in 2006. But just being a part of that community, I was a lot closer to that side of my family. They did a lot for the community. Power we known in West Brownsville, doing church cookouts, picnics,
Stuff like
yeah,
that,
Easter egg hunt, church trips. And I miss honestly. I miss a bunch of that stuff, man. I miss the community that we had. I was really cool with a lot of neighborhood kids, a lot of extended cousins. That once we stopped going, we really lost that contact.
And you know what? It's when you think about it now, community is not a big thing.
It's not. And
Like I feel like when they do community things, quote unquote, it's for publicity.
Promotional value.
Yeah,
Right.
pretty much. Like I don't see them actually just doing stuff for the community.
Right.
You know, like there's some church who have like I forgot the name of the church.
Now there's
They
actually
do like serve day.
Mhm.
Church of the
And-
Highlands.
I mean, and it's a big church and they have multiple campuses.
The Church of the Highlands.
Church of the Highlands.
And I'm like,
And we just
okay,
talking about
that's
that.
cool. And you think about, okay, serve day, you just go out and help somebody or whatever. That's cool. You know? But then I started thinking about it, I was like, so are y'all doing that for the community or are y'all doing it for your name? Because when they do it, they advertise it. When they do it, they wear their shirts.
If I can interject,
So I try to understand. I don't understand a lot of it.
the era
Uh,
that your father was in was an era that church was all the community had.
Yeah.
I can. What profession was your father in?
My dad was a laborer.
Okay, he was a blue-collar worker. And blue-collar workers did not get respect. In fact, they was treated segregated. So they were treated as inferior, while those who are in higher power felt superior over them. And the only places that they could always receive respect and notoriety was always in the home and in the church.
Yeah.
African American churches were blessed to, before people got political power, the church gave them power. Where they were disrespected, they were made deacons. Where women were called names that God knows what, we made them Sunday school teachers, matron and missionary leaders. In fact, you know, the church built community within the community.
Yeah.
They gave people status. People who did not have value and esteem, we gave them that.
Yeah, it's like
And
life
then-
outside of life.
Life outside, right. And as of that, it caused people within the community to be able to respect and revere the church. And over time, the church have lost its authenticity. It's lost its relevance. It's lost not only its relevance, but it lost its doctrine. Because as I have come to the realization, there has become a decolonizing and a detachment from our culture. Because our churches are in a way adapting the models of what, you know, and it's nothing wrong with multi-ethnic churches, because I believe that on the day of Pentecost, that everybody heard their language. And I look forward to one day being able to pastor a multi-ethnic church where have people who speak Spanish to come, people who have German. I believe that. But we have lost our map when we have turned church into commercialism and to convenience. You know, we complain about worship time, complain about how governance is, complain about how come we had to do the ordinances of the church and all of the above. And thus we have lost the authenticity of becoming community. And that Church of the Highlands, you know, I don't have no disdain or disrespect for them.
Yeah.
Because they're actually somewhat, in some kind of way, doing what the Great Commission calls us to do, go and make disciples. It's just the method of how they're strategically placing congregations in the inner city, where there are several churches and several communities around there. It's not so good, because it's not that the image is bad. It's just that the image is promoting as saying that we're coming in to do what y'all can't do.
Yeah.
We got money to do all of this. And in a crazy way, it's kind of hurting churches that actually are doing things within the context of their church from back in the day, where they put bricks on there, as well as they went out into the community, did a cookout. Everybody knew each other.
Yeah.
Even in this day, I can't speak for them, but I can speak for the context of the church that I pastored in 2019. When our church was in Evergreen community, our church did community cookouts. We did not wear church t-shirts, but we did do community cookouts. And we fed as many up to like 40 or 60 within the apartment complex. Our church buried people where we gave money to help sister such and such bury her loved one. I can't reveal the name because I don't want to do that to my member. And we was able to be a blessing to, I've seen times when I didn't have a car myself, still don't, but I was able to make sure that a member who needed a member in the community who didn't have a way to work got to work, not just one time, but more than one time.
Yeah.
The church became the church because the church is not confined to a building, it's confined to a body.
Yeah.
And we who are in this body represents the body of Christ. And so I say it like this: our churches have lost the community because we have allowed different things to just invade into the church. And unfortunately, Satan has tricks of manipulation, and through money and through politics and through different other corrupted and scandalous activities to stop the church from being a church.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And so the thing is, we have to get back to that. And my prayer is that as, you know, as churches in the community, that we can, you know, go forth to try to do a greater work.
So going back to what you were saying about the Church of the Highlands integrating themselves into inner city communities, I get that. Now, that is two sides of the same coin. They do integrate themselves in the inner city, and they do a lot of work out here. And yes, they do take away from some of the churches in the community. Now, let's talk about the churches in those communities that are not doing anything and losing their congregation to the Church of the Highlands simply for that fact.
But
but it's not doing that, because you got to look at this within the metropolis of Birmingham. There are several churches that are unsung heroes. Y'all seen the movie Hidden Figures?
Yes.
That those women were the hidden figures that helped those people at Nassau. All I'm saying is, you got several churches in Birmingham that are hidden figures. They don't say much. They don't advertise much.
But they do a lot.
But they do a lot.
And that's what I'm saying.
They are doing a lot to reach the masses. I can call out some churches, like for example, Greater New Antioch Baptist Church of Ensley. They have a community development corporation, where every month they give out milk, they give out fruit, they give out chickens, they give out turkeys during Thanksgiving, and even stuff every month. That's one church. Then you got Bethel Baptist Church, Pratt City. They're doing something where they have programs for school and other different things of that nature. Then the Rock Church, that may be a huge ministry within our city, but they have a school that's reaching inner city kids, as well as their ministries during the week are doing something to reach the least, the lost, and the left out. And then, of course, you have people like in East Lake, where his church is doing a Herculean job, where they have grocery giveaway every week. And not only that, they have free food where it's hot, or either it might be cold sometimes, where it's good. And they don't only just do that, but they've done gas giveaways and other things. All I'm saying is, before anybody can say what the church ain't doing, you really need to go in there.
Yeah.
And see for yourself.
And
because so many churches can only do what you can do.
Yeah.
Because to be honest, our churches in the community struggle because we got younger people now who and I'm not gonna pick on the millennials, because I'm a millennial myself, and all of y'all are millennials as well.
I consider myself one of those. Okay.
You don't?
Nope.
We're not millennials because we were all born before '95.
But
We technically are millennials.
We are generation. We are generation Y.
Yeah. See, because my whole thing is, like, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
And that's my thing. It's like, it's not that the churches are not doing what they're supposed to do. It's that they're not saying, hey, here I am. I'm going to do this.
Eliminate.
They're not saying, hey, I'm doing this. Look at me. And see, and that was my thing. Because I remember all of these things. But when these bigger churches come in and they have all this publicity, it's like, oh, this church is coming over here. I'm going to go here because they got all this publicity. You know, I'm hearing so much about them because they're on TV and they're doing this and they're doing that because they're advertising that that's what they're doing instead of just doing it. So for me, it's not like they're doing it as for the community.
And
It's doing it for their image.
And the funny thing, as we look at a church like the Church of the Highlands, is their church. I'm trying to see how to put this without condescending, without condemning them all the way down.
I mean,
They're a good church.
Yeah.
But one of their methods is just different than the ordinary. They
Yeah.
have small groups where they literally are building community within that small group.
Mm-hmm.
They go out and do serve days,
Yeah.
and contrary to some of my other counterpoints that say that they doing everything, they don't do stuff we do. On the contrary, they do. They have communion on the first Wednesday of the month. They baptize every Sunday. It's not publicized, but it is
Being done.
then done. And even the message as watered down as they can possibly be, and God forgive me for saying it, but it's just the truth. The shorthand version is a lot of them, unfortunately, have some kind of the scripture laced, but I really, as a preacher of the gospel, I know it's not something to fully stick, but that's why they do small groups to kind of help, do what they do.
Well, you do know we're in the era, we're in the microwave era. Everybody wants stuff quickly.
Yeah, quickly.
Even when it comes to church,
Right.
you can't have a 3-hour church service. Nobody's gonna stick around for that.
Oh, I remember.
Unfortunately, no one's gonna stick around for a 3-hour church
I
service.
remember that.
Those-
It's gotta be an
days.
hour and a half tops.
And that goes back those 3-hour church services.
And you know what, kids today would
Yeah.
never know anything about that.
No.
Nah, they won't even know about the second
sitting at
Be
service.
in church for
Yeah.
5
Look,
hours,
look,
bruh.
especially when they have a program later on in the
Yeah.
day.
Right.
And
Just sit at church like, I'm ready to go home, I'm hungry.
then they don't feed it after the first.
Oh,
There
I
is
remember
no-
those.
I'm not gonna lie, it was
when
a
there
real.
was a service or some kind of program, you always get fed. They don't know nothing about that.
Right.
You know, man, I'm hungry. What they cook today? What they down there cooking in the kitchen?
What I got upset about, and God forgive me for this, is when they started charging for plates after the service.
What?
Wait,
Where?
where?
What? Y'all don't know about that? Yeah.
That ain't never happened to me.
Yeah.
But
It happened when I was at
But
Mount Hermon Baptist
I
Church.
tell you one thing that I'm grateful, and I had to tell my members this, and it tickled Misha so bad that Sunday. I said, we ain't gonna be selling no more chickens, we ain't gonna be selling no fishes, and we ain't gonna be selling no babies. And she came to me at the church and said, Pastor, you ain't gonna sell Mark. I said baby contest. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know what you meant when you said. I said because back in the day, we literally, and I don't blame the older saints because they did what the Bible said.
Mm-hmm.
Like the early church, everything that we do in church is laced with scripture. It's saturated because that's what we do. We live our life off of the word of God.
Mm-hmm.
The early church was community. They had its own school because they devoted themselves daily to the apostles' doctrine. They value Christian education. Second thing is they value community empowerment, where that the first feeding program that they ate at one another's house as much as they could. They broke bread together from house to house.
Mm-hmm.
Then they sold each other's possessions. That's economic community development right there. to make sure that those who would stand after they experienced what they experienced, they did what they did. That was community development. Where they just went ahead and they built community right there. And the Bible said at the end of that, and the church added daily, over 3,000 souls were saved every time. Because they valued Christian education, community empowerment. They was consistent in evangelism, and most of all, they kept the main thing the main thing.
Yeah.
And that's the downfall of today's church, is that we've lost the main thing. You know, it's all right to brand the ministry. It's all right to market the ministry. It's all right to do community, you know, things within the community, because I love that.
Mhm.
But at the end of the thing is, when the main thing becomes the last thing, that's when it's a problem.
Yeah. And that's how I feel about all those big churches. I'm like, for me, I like not necessarily the smaller churches, but the more personal churches, because you get to know everybody.
Right.
I remember choir practice on Tuesday, Bible study on Wednesday, and it was like, all right, I'm going to school. Let me help fix me something to eat and drink before the church van comes, so I can get ready to go. And I remember, as being younger, excited to go to church. I would drop everything to go, because I enjoyed it, because my church family was my family. Like, we sung everywhere, and you did revival and vacation Bible. So then it was like, oh, that's this week? Okay. Like, I don't see that excitement. I see when you talk about kids going to church, half of them don't go, over half of them don't go. A lot of them being forced to go, and they don't like it. And I'm just like, it's not what I'm used to. It's not what I grew up in. You thinking hard over there.
Mm-hmm.
Because he almost was ready to say something.
Right. I think I look at it like this. Growing up, I'm like my brother Jamal. My father raised me in church. I've been to church all my life, ever since I was born. But the way I look at it, I don't view church as the same anymore. It's like it's not really church for real.
No.
It's like, cause let's just say, okay, I go to church now. On Sundays, I go a little bit before the sermon just to hear singing, listen to, the scripture and prayer, listen to the sermon. After the sermon, I'm out of there.
You don't have the urge to want to stay.
I don't want to stay around.
Because remember, church will let out and you stay a good hour talking to everybody.
Just talking to people.
Hey.
But it's like now, it's like people want to know more about, your personal life and everything like that when it comes to going to church, instead of just focusing on, learning the word and all that stuff. It just, it makes you want to run. It's like,
you I can do this at home. I
exactly.
gotta be around y'all.
And that's when we come into the commercial aspect of it, and I broke it down to this, and I broke it down to these 3 letters: PPG. Popularity, politics, gossip.
Yep.
Facts. I can see that.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's like, I look at it like this. When you go to church, I feel like you have more drama in church.
It has become very.
It's like big time. It's like, okay, let's just say this. A couple of weeks ago, I joined the church, right? Because I was undecided for a long time. I have been going to this church. And great church, but congregation is messed up.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And even when I joined the church, the lady who brought me to the back, to tell me all about the church, what activities they got, what they have going on and everything, even she said, well, there's a lot of drama in this church, so stay clear of a lot of people.
And for someone, I have to tell you that.
That's what I'm saying.
Because you're better than me, because if that would have happened to me, I honestly, I probably wouldn't have went back.
But see,
that's just like a put off.
I would say this, like, for example, I always, as a pastor, try my best to get to know everybody personally. And as a pastor, the job of a pastor is to be the shepherd over the sheep, because that's what the Lord called the congregation membership.
Right.
And as a pastor, one of the things I have to do is make sure that the sheep don't get devoured by some of the wolves, or from some of these older sheep that will get that are blind, that are dumb, and they've gotten to the place where it's a thing called sheep bucking up against each other to a defect. And sometimes you had to do what you had to do if you want that person to you see them growing and you want them to be in a good direction, but you don't want nothing cancerous to get upon them.
Right.
Yeah. Continue.
But it's the thing. I mean, this came to me, and plus at the time the church was, didn't have a pastor at the time. The pastor that they did have had just, stepped down from the mantle because it was a retirement. He didn't.
It's his time.
It's his time. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But what I like about him, and he's the reason I joined the church. I didn't know he was going to leave at that time.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you knew he was leaving, would you join?
Yeah, I mean, if I didn't know, if I know he was leaving, I probably wouldn't have joined.
You probably would have waited a little bit.
I probably would have waited to see what he was talking about, But I liked him because they still bring him back. And what I like about him is, he said this one quote, and it stuck with me forever. He said, they called me back to preach. He said, I might not be the pastor of this church anymore, but I'm going to continue to preach. And I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. Because in the same sense, it gives you something to, look forward to.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like
I'm going to come back because y'all ain't going to tell me when he's going to be here. It's going to be like a surprise.
You know what I'm saying? So, I mean.
And I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
They still looking for a pastor right now.
Yeah. And
let me say, my prayers are with them. He knows I know.
Right.
And that goes to the political side. And then what was the first piece?
Politics,
popularity,
gossip.
Gossip.
It's a lot of gossip.
Yeah, and you know what? Gossip has always been a part of church.
But not as much as now.
The thing is,
church got more teeth in the shade room. I just had to say that.
We go back to what we talked about, the church being community.
Yeah.
Right.
Back in the day,
everybody knew everything.
Right.
Everybody knew everything about everybody.
Right.
Even in the community, they knew that one of the teachers that was a teacher at the school, they knew he was gay.
Right.
Even at church, they knew that.
Right.
But the thing I love about the older saints back then is they covered people.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they believe that love covers a multitude of sin. Now they confronted. I'm sorry, Steve. They confronted sin.
I'm still here.
They confronted it, but they confronted it, but they still covered one another.
Yeah.
Right.
They covered it in prayer, and they covered them personally. Now we live in a generation where this reality housewife generation, it's more so I got to spill the tea, let the tea out,
right.
And you don't give a care or a flip how everything is going to affect anybody.
Right.
And that's why you got so many individuals committing suicides and homicides unnecessarily, because people can't hold their tea.
Right.
And even in the church, we may have had some mess, but at the end of the day, we found ways to kind of squash it and ask God's forgiveness, as well as we kept working, because all of us, But at the end of the day, some of the stuff that we've allowed in the church is just crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, but the thing is, the root of it is Satan. Satan is the root of all of some of the things, but at the end of the day, we have to keep upholding Jesus up.
Yeah.
Because Jesus Christ is the answer to all of our problems.
Yeah.
No matter what. And that's that. But the politics of the church is the thing that really gets me, because one of the things in the Baptist faith is that if you want to become a pastor in the Baptist faith, you have to, put your resume in.
Right.
In some situations, or some situations you might be recommended in, and all of the above. And after that, the congregation will vote because they believe in autonomy. Right. Some churches are not like that. And politics,
letting the congregation have a say so on who leads them.
Well,
right. but sometimes this is the flip side of this, Mish. Some congregations forget to pray before they select the pastor.
Yeah.
They select the pastor not off of prayer, but off of personality.
Yeah, that popularity.
Popularity. Because some people say, "Oh, he preach good. He could preach good. He could sing good." They get so caught up in the emotionalism, but then now you stuck with somebody that's nothing more than a hireling.
Yeah.
That's gonna come in and devour the flock.
Yep.
They gonna
Entertain.
watch, entertain, gonna swindle, gonna do all.
So pretty much, he's talented, but who is he as a person?
Right.
Yeah. What is he teaching us?
Right. And I've seen churches in Birmingham that have hired hirelings. Matter of fact, one congregation, it's several in our city that have hired hirelings where they're preached to get in, but their character cannot keep them there.
Yeah.
They have made it into a holy hustle and not made it into a divine appointment.
You
I like
said
that.
a whole hustle.
I like that.
Holy hustle.
I like
Holy
that.
hustle. I like
Yeah,
that.
they
'Cause
made
that's
it.
how it makes you feel.
It really does feel like that.
And for some of the guys that's trying to do the right thing, trying to go in the community and
Actually
teach the gospel and trying to build a congregation up, it makes people look bad.
It does.
It's sad when I get younger people that's young that say I don't like going to the church because of this, and some of that is just misconceived notions.
Yeah.
I mean misguided notions and all of the above.
Yeah, I understand. But that's how I feel now. I'm like, because you want to go and visit other churches because you want to see everybody's point of view. And you go on and you're like, what are you talking about?
Right.
You're like, that's not what it means, because you know better.
Right.
But everybody like this person. It's not about the ministry anymore. That's how I
No.
feel.
It's not.
PPG, we get it every time.
Right.
You get it with popularity, politics, and
Gossip.
and
Right.
God.
Yeah, that gospel is just that distraction to keep you from the
It
word.
is.
Right.
Yeah.
That's all that is.
Right.
It's the devil's and everything.
One
The distraction.
Sunday, I realized something. You cannot change old people.
No.
No.
They are so set
They're
in
set
their
in their
ways.
ways.
But you got to look at it. They were once our age,
Mm-hmm.
and they coming toward the end. Like I just can't. I got. Sometimes we forget that they were once young, and we one day gonna become old. That's the That's the circle of life.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
a lot of them,
we are-
but some of
we
them
are-
ain't grown up either though.
Yeah, but some of them are still babes in Christ.
Yeah,
They still sucking on.
I got you.
Yeah, y'all get the point.
Yeah, we got you.
You
got
got it.
Can I say this just to piggyback off that? I actually told I was telling one of my patients about this episode before we decided to record it, and she was an older black woman, devout member of the church. I believe she goes to Galilee Missionary Baptist Church
In Fairfield.
in Fairfield.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Shout out to Cedric Grabowski.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I told her about this episode, and she didn't think it was a good idea.
Why she did it?
She didn't think it was a good idea because she felt like that we would bash the church, because I told her we're going to be asking a lot of tough questions that nobody really wants to answer, which is what we're doing, and we're putting it out in the air for everyone to hear. She's like, well, you really shouldn't be putting church business out there. I'm like, I'm not putting church business out there. I'm trying to get a consensus
Right.
and knowledge of where did we go wrong, how do we fix it?
Right.
And how
How
we
to bring
go-
us
and
together.
how to bring us together, and how we do that. I bring a pastor onto my show, someone that's deeply involved in that community already. Because I told her personally, I'm not as involved as I should be.
Right.
So I don't have the knowledge to actually properly speak on that subject.
Right.
But
So
without that support.
Exactly.
Right.
So let me bring in someone I know personally who is deeply embedded in that community, who is deeply embedded into that life, to give me their perspective on it. Because as of right now, I'm speaking blindly to a subject that I really don't know anything about.
Yeah. Get that knowledge.
and get that knowledge. And the only way to do that is to bring in a pastor
Right.
Yeah.
that can actually speak on it, so we can actually ask the questions that need to be asked.
Yeah, because there's a lot of people with questions, but they're like, who do I ask?
And that's where politics comes back. Politics comes back in. Another thing about politics is that politics is based on lies, unfortunately.
Yeah.
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 Politics is based on just like our government. Our government is based on a lot of lies. It's a lot of stuff that they're not telling us.
Of course.
And the same thing comes with the governance of the church. There are some dirty little secrets or some stuff that's going on that the congregation doesn't need to know about.
Right.
But because you're withholding that information, you're losing the community.
Right.
Yeah.
You're losing your congregation.
And then when they find out,
And then when they
just pushes
find
them
out,
away.
it just pushes them away, and then that's where the distrust of the church comes in. That's why I don't like going to church because of this reason.
Yeah.
They're doing this. They're doing this right here. Stuff changed.
I
Yeah.
had in my congregation, Misha would testify this because it was hard to keep younger and middle-aged members when I had older people who really wanted to do whatever they wanted to do to sabotage the ministry.
Because they wanted it their way.
They really did.
They thought that
And-
they controlled it and that they
and
ran it. And
they-
I'm
like for example, if I said to do one thing, the only reason some stuff was a downfall was because of my age. I will openly admit that. Some stuff was my fault, but the majority of it is they look down, like the scripture Paul told Timothy, don't let them intimidate you because you're young, but be an example. And sometimes their actions older people's actions can intimidate young people instead of, that's why I encourage, if you're older, lift up young people. And
Right.
even
Yeah.
if you're younger, lift up older people because we all need each other.
yeah.
We then that are strong ought to bear the infirmities of those that are weak. Now, it would be hard to have meetings at my church at one time because some of them will come in there with written agendas on what I didn't do right. And my question is, why are you trying to tell me what I did wrong when everything is supposed to be,
Can't be railroading your pastors.
right, exactly. I was like, some stuff don't need to be congregational. Some stuff need to be personal, like between one-on-one.
Yeah.
Because everybody don't need to, like, you gonna meet saying that I feel I feel money don't need to go towards paying the pastor. That's going to talk to me personally saying I don't like that they would say something like this. Because you go above and beyond. Because people think that the pastor's job is just on Sunday, just to preach a little sermon. No. You don't know the nights that the pastor got to go and be with somebody who's about to almost go to jail and you got to help them not go there. Or better yet, you get a call from the hospital saying that a member is dying and you need to be up there with the family to help them as they're grieving. You don't even know when a baby comes into the world and you want to be there to support. Shout out to Misha and Jamal from that time. And come to think about it, even a low moment that they had when they had their first miscarriage,
Yeah.
who had to be there? The pastor.
Yeah.
And then other situations where, in fact, if marriage counseling, thank God they still together because of me. Thank you, Jesus. So I'm saying that through all of this, everything plays a part where we all work together to build ministry. That's
Yeah.
the main part that I'm trying to say to all of this.
Yeah.
Is that we have to be, where we go wrong is some stuff we allow to come in. And I don't want to take over.
No,
No, you go ahead, man.
You on the road.
Okay.
Yeah,
Roll
do your
tonight.
thing.
A topic that is on this about corruption. How did the church go to commercialism and corruption? Listen, years ago, I got to tell y'all this. If I don't tell y'all nothing else,
Preach.
white evangelicals messed up all of us to where the church cannot be the community. You had that thing with Jim and Tammy Faye Baker to go out back in the day The thing that something happened with Jimmy Swaggart and his wife, because he got up and made a big old sermon about it, and then he ended up confessing to say, I have sinned against heaven. Yeah, that's what he did. But all of that played a part because people saw the lavish, luxurious lifestyles that they were living. Saw that they were making big bucks. They were stacking their security bag real good. They were dripping on finesse.
You know what? That is a big thing. People always say.
And people have the nerve and the audacity to say that the pastor is getting all the money.
Oh yeah.
That is, forgive me for saying this, and I never cuss in public.
Oh.
But that's a goddamn lie. And I did not say God, I said God.
But you know, it's some churches that do that though.
It's some.
That the pastor takes more than what they are supposed to.
Yeah.
What is negotiated.
Because you got some people that are pastors that will embezzle money, put money in secret accounts. They'll do some stuff for ungodly purposes.
And that ruins it for everybody.
It's a church in Jefferson County right now.
Oh Lord.
That God in heaven knows. We don't even know what happened. But it's a church right now where there's stuff going on like that. Even to this day.
But that caused distrust within communities. So when they were like, okay, well, something going on with this church, let me find another one.
Yeah.
But they're not thinking that the pastor has a job outside, because some of them have a job outside of just doing that. Some of them just do it.
And then what people would be fail to realize is people like T.D. Jakes, for example. A lot of people give him a bad rep. Now, he is the most solid biblical preacher that I've heard in my lifetime. He's long-winded, but he's pretty decent, and I love T.D. Jakes. I love him. Sometimes I had to sit there like, I'm trying to get the understanding of this, but then sometimes he's good. But one thing people say, oh, he taking the church money.
No, he got businesses.
But you got to understand, he's invested. He's a movie writer.
Yeah.
And he's invested book writer. Some of those sermons he preached are just books that he's written.
Yeah.
He's found multiple streams of income, so now he don't have to depend on the church.
Yep.
The only thing he does now is make sure that his staff got a job so that they can be able to feed their families.
Yeah.
That's the aspect of the church. That's one aspect when we don't just feed the flock on Sundays, but we can help feed them through the week by giving them a job.
Yeah.
Amen.
And he getting paid just because, and he basically he ain't working because he have to. He working because he want everyone else to have a job so they can succeed.
Hey, if I eat, we all eat.
Exactly.
And what was you gonna say?
Oh, I just have to ask this question because you were talking about white televangelists. How you feel about Billy Graham? I had to ask that question.
I have mixed views. Billy Graham will have to go down as one of the great evangelists of our 20th and 21st century. Stellar ministry where he was able to pack out stadiums, and he only preached one message, and that message was about Jesus Christ. Now, on the theological side and the race side, a lot of us as African Americans feel that, some of my contemporaries might feel that he was a bit racist and that he did not publicly support the civil rights movement, but in different ways he kind of did. Secretively, he probably did. That's my personal belief. But other than that, I really believe he did what he had to do to help people to get saved. Because I've seen more people come to Christ, and in fact, so many of he have to this day, even though he's now a blessed memory. He was a great evangelist. I used to love watching him as a kid. First white guy I ever watched on TV that was a preacher. Beside him and Earl Polk and Rob Parsley and Jan and I forget what Jan Crouch and her husband. I can't think of who was on TV and so forth. But other than that, yeah, I never had no bad feelings about Billy Graham because I just always watched their broadcasts and how he would just preach the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Billy Graham was a powerful man. He converted the Queen of England into a Baptist.
She not Baptist. She Church of England.
No,
No,
he
she not.
he converted her to a Baptist
Says
when he
who?
was alive. Yes, it is written in her memoirs. She met with Billy Graham. She converted.
You're kidding.
No.
Now he gonna end up googling.
That's a
it, so-
powerful man right there. You turned the Queen of England.
I watched the
Into a
documentary.
Baptist?
Billy Graham converted.
Now he
Queen
didn't
Elizabeth.
convert her into a Baptist, but
She decided that she wanted, because Billy Graham was so Billy Graham was a very powerful man, and she really respected him that during his lifetime while he was still alive, because she consulted him on a lot of her decisions.
wow.
She called Billy Graham to London to consult him on a lot of things.
Hey, that was best friend.
Yeah. All right, y'all. We're gonna take a quick break, man. We have been doing it tonight, man.
Yeah.
Glad to have you here, brother. But
Exactly.
we gonna take a quick break, and we're gonna be right back with y'all.
Yeah.
And we're back to the second segment of the Plug Talk podcast. This has actually been a very enlightening episode, man. Like,
Really
for real.
enlightening.
It's really enlightening, man. I want to thank Pastor KJ again for joining us tonight, answering a lot of questions that we had.
That we didn't even ask.
We didn't ask them, but I'm glad we got answers to them.
Yeah.
So
He answered the question
I'm
before
guess-
we even asked him.
I'm guessing we're gonna make this segment pretty quick, and we're gonna wrap up here. So I'm guessing this is gonna be the Q&A session.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of
This
cues.
This is the Capri Sun
Yeah,
conversation.
the Caprice. Yeah.
The CC.
Capri Sun. Hey, I just want to put out there that I have a real Capri Sun, and it says "Real dogs don't sip." I like that.
Well, I say
like
big
that.
personality. What yours say?
Real dogs.
Real
don't
dogs
sip.
don't sip.
And mine say big personality.
Whoa, look
Yeah.
at that. Look at
Big
that pattern going on.
Yeah.
Big personality. Hey, what's the difference between Methodists and Baptists?
The difference is doctrinal differences and ordinance differences. In the Baptist faith, in the sense of baptism, all of us in here have been what? Dunked.
Yeah.
Dunked.
We've been dunked in the water.
Yeah, but I was baptized
And
by
some-
Methodists and I
right.
was dunked.
Okay, so you were dunked, but it's a difference because in the Methodist Church they sprinkle, and
Oh, okay.
then plus their theology, like some Baptists are Reformed, and some Methodists to a degree are Reformed in a way.
Okay.
But in the difference is some of them follows under the Wesleyan traditions and have some Armenian type doctrinal concepts as it relates to doctrine. So it's just some doctrinal differences that divides us. But other than that, we all believe in the 26 articles of faith
Mm-hmm.
too, and we all believe on our stance on marriage, with the exception of the United Methodists. But that's not neither here nor there.
Okay.
But,
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess my conclusion about the church I went to is right then. I think my church was Baptist, but they just had a method. The name was just had Methodist in there. I'm just saying.
St. Paul.
Yeah,
Was
St. Paul Community
Yeah,
Community Methodist Church in Selma. Yeah.
That technically
Wow.
that's just the that church is an independent Methodist church. It's really a
Wait,
So
you remember that?
yeah.
Bro, that was a long time ago.
Hey,
St. Paul Community Methodist Church. Shout out.
knowledge.
Man, I love that church. That church was my life.
Knowledge.
It's
I remember getting my tea cakes.
Right. I've been to several churches, and it wasn't like one specific church.
Well, see, that's why and that's the one thing I remember about my childhood.
Well-
That's why I said I like church, because I actually wanted to go.
You know, son, you remember me and you gotta talk about a sidebar conversation I just thought about. Okay.
Sorry.
Because I had several churches I went to. My first church I grew up in was Mount Olive Baptist Church.
I've been there.
In Selma?
No.
No, that
You
was
know?
here.
It went on?
It was no, it's in either it's in Wellham or Ely.
The only Mount Olive Baptist church that I know about is the one in Winona.
And the
Well,
one in
Winona.
Fairfield. And one in Fairfield.
Yeah, one in Fairfield.
Okay,
That's what I'm
there we
thinking
go.
about.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was just there this week. I went to support some friends in revival.
Yeah, I went there for.
Newton was the pastor in there.
Yeah, he is the.
But
Before
Dr.
then.
Salary was the
Yeah.
pastor.
Yeah.
Oh, so you knew Dr.
Yeah.
Palmer.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know. Yes,
And
yes.
that woman is still going strong. Shout out to Dr. Salary.
Yeah,
Hey.
yeah.
Yeah.
Very strong. I know a lot of those members. And then I went to Powderly Baptist Church.
First Baptist.
Yeah, First Baptist.
Good church.
In Powderly.
I like how he able to correct you when you mess
I
up.
like
He'd have
that.
been
I like
everywhere.
that. Yeah, I like that. And then after that, I went to Tuscaloosa to Elizabeth Baptist Church.
Oh yeah, Dr. Vernon Swift.
Boy,
See?
hey,
See?
hey,
I told you.
Dr. Burns, hey, I like Dr. Swift.
To know
I-
is to love him.
Yeah,
I love when he get sneaking in doing the little holy dance when he.
yes, yes.
They go for broke in that.
I like
church.
I like him and his wife,
Yeah.
Miss Swift. Miss Swift's
I like
a
church
sweet
that
lady.
goes in that little entertainment
Yeah,
and
she
connected.
Yeah, oh, yeah. We cannot forget she's
Yes,
beautiful.
Yes.
Yes, and her daughter. Yeah,
Oh yes.
yeah. Oh, trust me, I crushed over that woman for the longest.
And I hope
Yeah.
they hear this podcast.
Yeah, I hope they do.
Shout out to Palace Swift daughters.
Exactly. Kevin, I'm sorry. That's the son.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Kevin. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Pastor Washington.
Yeah.
Please don't
Yeah,
hold it against me.
yeah. I'm sorry.
I'll hold
But-
it against you for
Yeah. But after Elizabeth, then now the church I recently joined New Bethlehem. But that's been my church journey.
I think that's I've only joined one church. But like I said, I was in Selma for most of my life until I moved up here.
Yeah, I joined.
And when they moved up here, they're proud members of the Solid Rock Baptist Church.
Yeet.
Shout out Solid Rock.
Shout out Solid Rock.
Solid Rockites.
But it's so crazy to see how the transition from when you was a little kid
Mm-hmm.
to growing up, to see how the church has changed.
Yeah, how it's changed. But then to look back and see how it helped mold you. in
Yeah,
your life.
it did.
And then you start thinking about, well, if I would have started going, if I would have was a kid this day and age, going to the churches now,
Right.
and like, would I be as dedicated? Would I
No. I
be
don't
as
think I
informed
would.
or have love?
I would say the foundation
That's the
for
key
where
word.
we
Yes.
began
That's a key word.
has
Foundation.
helped the foundation for how we can be able to bless our kids.
Yes.
Our situations now, the church now is everything like stuff back in the day. I won't ever forget, like when we had microphones malfunctions, we used to have to rig it up.
Now we
Now
just,
today we can just call the technician and say, hey, we got a problem.
Right.
You
when the
know,
microphone didn't work at my church,
church,
we were like, oh, whatever.
yeah.
Our voice is loud
yeah.
enough anyway.
And same difference with that, yeah. And it's just, that dynamic is just so, different because church back in the day, we had to do those long services like we talked about.
Oh yeah.
And then
Never left church.
Yeah, never left church. But then, it just,
What time left church?
You know.
It was 5 o'clock.
Church was a shift.
yeah. But
Yeah.
Okay.
But it was fun though. You didn't.
I have a question.
Okay.
And this would be my question for the Q&A segment.
Okay.
All right. Do you see the church evolving within the next 5 to 10 years?
Believe it or not, I do. I see the church evolving towards becoming the church that it needs to become.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also see it evolving as in there are some shifting changes that is coming into the churches we are seeing now.
Right.
Some that, like Scripture said, there's nothing new that's under the sun.
Right. Right.
Pay attention to the camera, Steve.
Oh, I'm listening.
Something flashing.
Oh,
Low
Better.
battery.
Robert, you good.
Okay,
Continue.
praise the Lord. Certain things are coming in the church now. Like you have different things that's gonna test our doctrine, test what we believe,
Mm-hmm.
and if we're not careful, some of the things that is being imposed upon the church will be trying to be inflicted on the church.
Right.
But nonetheless, as long as our churches are rooted and grounded in God's grace, and our churches are covered by what we need to make sure our churches are covered in the sense of making sure from the law aspect that we got everything written down, what we believe and how we conduct ourselves, I don't believe the church is going to be that bad. Now, in the sense of evolving, it's evolving technologically.
Right.
Oh yeah,
Where,
definitely.
you know, technology is, they say, is the devil's workmanship. I don't agree with that. It's used to our advantage.
Right.
But at the same time, some of the stuff that we have issues about now, I think they're gonna become an anomaly at some point.
Right.
Yeah.
If I can use that word.
I think that it's good and bad. It can lead to destruction if used improperly.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Because we do have a lot of stay-at-home churchgoers.
Right. All right.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
So here's my question.
Pause that thought. Hold on, people. We'll be back in 1 second. Give us a minute.
All right, we're back. I'm just kidding.
All right, and we're back. Thank you for waiting.
Thank you for your patience. Love you guys.
Much love.
Much love. All right, so actually, this is actually going to go back to the discussion that we were having earlier before we got here about Catholicism, and it's actually going to lead up to what we have now. So, you know, like I know, once upon a time, the church was the state.
Yeah.
The church dictated the bylaws. They dictated the laws of the land. Now that we have it, like here in the United States, how we have an established government, even though the church dictates a lot of our political leaders now too.
Yeah.
Mm,
And we have seen that recently through the asinine decisions of some of our American evangelicals as they have elected an egotistical, misogynistic jackass that sits at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. But nonetheless, continue.
So my question is now, how is it much different now than it was then?
You got to look at what happened then in different aspects. Like a lot of people talks about, again, Christianity being a white man's religion. And, you know, some of the main things that our counterparts that happens to be Hebrew Israelites would talk about that Christianity started in the 1600s. Biggest lie from hell. Christianity was started after Jesus died and after he rose again, after he ascended into heaven, and one day he's going to come back. But the marching order that he gave his disciples, which were apostles, was to go make disciples, go into all the world, teach the world and making disciples. But nonetheless, Christianity started off doing good, but people were persecuted because different empires did not believe in Jesus Christ, because Jesus did miracles and did all of the above, but they could not subscribe to him being a man of power. And so they persecuted Christians. They burned them at stake. If you wanted to call yourself a Christian, you had to realize you had to die and be a martyr for the faith. Thus, that's why I somewhat understand why our Catholic counterparts honor those saints that have died before, because many of them were beaten, thrown in infernos, thrown to lions and eaten up by them. Even though she don't like snakes, if she saw how they was eating up human beings with the lions, you would think that all the above. And people were actually getting killed for being a Christian. Yeah. But over time, an emperor who was blessed by the ministry of Jesus Christ, by the name of Constantine, he ends up becoming a Christian and saying that the Roman Empire is going to adopt Christianity. That everything that was pagan is going to be turned into Christian meaning. Mm-hmm. Thus, you got the days of the week and feast days and all that have become holidays. That stuff that was once like the god, like Easter is of the goddess Ishtar, and Ishtar was the god of fertility. And every spring they would celebrate the goddess Ishtar, which is the goddess of fertility. And so every time you see the eggs on Easter, that goes traced back to Ishtar. And they made that into a holiday, but that's not either neither here nor there. It goes back from Constantine being over the historical reign. And then from that, Christianity began to spread, but through the Middle Ages, it became corrupt. What started out as something good and godly, it became corrupt, it became greedy. You had popes that ended up producing stuff in the purgatory and different things of that particular nature, and it gets crazy. All the way up to the point that people that was with the Church of England left the Catholic Church, and they became the Church of England, which is of the Anglican faith. And people got mad at the Queen of England, King and Queen of England, and they decided they wanted to go to America. And they came over to America and ended up in the name of the Lord, unfortunately, came over to America, made peace with Native Americans, then killed Native Americans and stole their land. Now, that's my take on that historically. And after that, from then to now, we have seen the greediness of all races becoming so anti-Christ and anti-God and just being political. You know, doing stuff like not having affordable health care. I hope I'm not going too far off subject, but not affordable health care, and got people chaining up immigrants for coming into the city and into the cities to become citizens and doing all ungodly stuff. And so the gist of all of that is, in the 1960s, everything started out with a godly purpose. But then we've allowed atheism and Jehovah's Witnesses, people who do not believe what we believe as Christians, to invade in and make requests to go forth and make a request to do away with the church being involved in government. And somewhere between the 1960s, you see the separation of church and state within the context of the United States. And thus, with separation of church and state, meaning that you cannot pray in public, you cannot have, major buildings cannot have crosses and 10 commandments, and cannot have any symbols that we have. But the only foolish thing that we got on a quarter or on a dollar or on some kind of other currency, we'll say, "In God we trust." Right. It's amazing that we would take God out of the capital, we'll take God out of the city, but we won't take God out of the currency.
Now, an interesting fact about that, that wasn't even added onto the currency until 1950. It was never on there to begin with. It was the whole saying itself was only implemented after World War II.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
So a lot of people's like, well, we're a nation built under God. Yeah, we became a nation built under God after 1950. Before that, it had nothing to do with that.
And thus, and it goes to show you that Christians, if we really wanted to be technical, I really believe that there should not have been no separation of church and state. But then again, I kind of understand how you have some people who believe according to the Bible, where some people believe in abortion, some people don't believe in abortion. Some people believe in homosexuality, some people don't believe in it. Some people believe in euthanasia, some people don't believe in euthanasia. Some people believe in immigrants coming into the city, into the community, into the country. Some people don't believe it. Yeah. And thus, you're going to have different people of different faith traditions that believe the golden rule, treat others like you want to be treated, but yet you got different people who have been paid, who have been elected to look out for the citizens of their states and of this country, to fight the good fight of faith, but yet, it goes south. Yeah. And so that's why we have separation of church and state, because The government don't want, different entities to become affected by stuff, and that's why, even back to the part I left out about the white evangelicals and Tamara Baker and all of them, when they saw the lavishness, the IRS got involved. Mm-hmm. And thus, when the IRS got involved, they began to come after pastors and churches. All because of stupid negligence, as I perceived it to have happened. And even if somebody was to come to me with something like that, I'm like, cool, come. But I don't really have nothing to really, to report on anything, because I pastor a small parish. And it ain't nothing, that had to do with me. And so it's just, you got a separation of church and state. I hope and pray that answers the question. If you got more information that you need, just look up some different things on some encyclopedias, as well as some different things about this particular subject. Because some stuff I don't know, I will admit that. But
I know, I understand, and the reason that I brought that question up was because, like I said, we both know once upon a time that I know in Europe, when Catholicism ruled the land, the Pope was the president, prime minister. He was above the monarch. The monarch reported to the Pope.
And still to this day.
And still to this day, but most monarchs that still live in Europe.
But one thing you got to look at with the Pope, though, but the Pope has his own city-state. And that what a lot of people says that about the infallibility of the Pope, that what the Pope says it goes, is not on the sense of biblical context, like some people talk about how he's rewriting the Lord's Prayer. He did. From what I have gathered and studied with my context of the Lord's Prayer, because I did a Bible study series on it, what he was saying was really partially what the original Greek translation of that text was. Partially. And he was just saying that you can say this, but it's not in that sense the infallibility of the Pope as I have perceived it to be, because he is a leader over a city-state, and he is a political leader as well as a spiritual leader as well. That what he says as it relates to that city-state as well as to the churches to do the right thing to do what needs to be done, that is what that infallibility says on that. When it comes to scripture and it comes to doctrine, that's a different subject. Different subject. Yeah.
Is it bad that I feel odd that one political leader has its own sovereign city-state in the middle of a country that has its own government?
To be honest, that's like a lot of go back to Africa. You got several. Africa is one big continent, but you got several city-states that are called countries. Like you got Ethiopia, you got Liberia, you got Kenya, you got South Africa, you got Mozambique, you got but you got other ones under that, and they're like city-states that are their own countries, that their own government, and everything else within that. And I don't see nothing wrong with that, because think about it like this: if you really go back with all the bad stuff that happens in Roman Catholicism, my heart goes out to many of the victims that was affected by child abuse scandals and some of the things that these priests and nuns did. My heart goes out to that. My heart goes out to, Roman Catholicism in the wake of some of their beliefs on different things as it relates to abortion and human sexuality. My heart goes out to them. But one of the good things about Roman Catholicism, and people can fight whatever they do, but at the end of the day, the Roman Catholic Church is going to be blessed, because they don't just invest into a person, they invest in the people. They send missionaries out to third and fourth world countries to send aid and assistance and ministry there. Their religious life is top notch. They don't just sit and pray, but they go out and meet the people, and they go back into their, clustered life, and they pray and do the work of the Lord. They subject their lives to prayer and to that ministry, as well as they're doing things, to honor God. And all of their doctrinal differences that may divide us, they are doing what we're trying to do, and that is the church become a community base more than it be commercialized. Because you got to get it. Mostly every Catholic church that.
All right, y'all. This has been a Plug Talk podcast. I want to thank Pastor Kelvin Anthony for joining us tonight on the show. It's been very enlightening, very informative.
Yes. Yes.
It's been great having you here, dude.
Yeah,
Like, for real.
Really amazing. Really amazing.
It really has been a joy and an honor to have come to share with y'all on this night, and to be able to give some information and some stuff we just shot from the cuff, and I'm just grateful that it's been very enlightening and very encouraging. And then it's been a blessing to be able to spend some time with all three of these individuals, especially Jamisha and Jamal.
Because we're awesome.
Because they're members of our beloved church, the Solid Rock Church. Shout out Solid Rock.
Shout out.
Solid Rock.
We just thank God for them. But if y'all want to be so kind and follow us, follow our ministry, feel free to follow me. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. My Twitter, Instagram handle is KJANT91, and my Facebook handle is RevKJANT91. And you can also follow the Solid Rock Baptist Church on Facebook as well. And any given Sunday you're in the Ensley or Greater Birmingham area, we would love for you to come and share with us at the Solid Rock Church at 2112 17th Street, Ensley, Birmingham, Alabama 35218, any Sunday at 10 a.m. where we are a church that love Christ, learn about Christ, live like Christ, lead others to Christ, and hope that you'll be liberated in Christ Jesus. And nonetheless, I would love for you to be our guest. We're worshiping temporarily with the New Hope Baptist Church, where Reverend Courtney Hilliard is the pastor. But we're there until the Lord blesses us to get a building of our own. But until then, grow with us and see what the Lord doing. Any Sunday 10. God bless you. Thank you for letting me come and share on this podcast. I love each and every one of you, and hope to see y'all soon.
All right, and that has been this week's episode of the Plug Talk podcast. Look forward to y'all listening to us again next weekend. We also want to send special prayers out to our man London. London, like we said last week, has been under the weather. He's been a little down right now, so we're sending big prayers out to him, hoping that he gets better, hoping that he can join us again soon.
Get well soon, brother.
Get well soon, man.
In fact, let's take a moment of silence for him. Amen.
Amen.
This has been the Plug Talk podcast. I'm Jamal.
I'm Steve.
I'm Misha.
Pastor KJ!
All right.
All right.
Peace.
Peace.
Peace out, people!